Welcome to Caring for Everyone, for Everybody, which is taking place today. And I'm Noni, and I'll be your host today. And I'm really excited to spend time with two of really amazing organisers that I know. And so maybe to just start, I'm going to start by introducing Decolonising Economics. Who we are. So we are Decolonising Economics, and here we are on the left is Guppi, who's my other half in Decolonising Economics, and there's me. And we're also joined today by Sophie, who is one of the people that helps us organise Decolonising Economics, and Ola. And Ola is going to be here for any of your tech problems. So if you're having any problems with sound, or like you get kicked out of the Zoom, and yeah, you just need some support in the duration of the event today, just message Ola. So Decolonising Economics, what we're doing, why we're doing this. So we are Decolonising Economics is a grassroots collective working to build an economy built on racial justice principles. And we just feel like the ways in which the stories of the economy are told tend to leave out those people who the economy actually operates on in order to continue to exploit and to harm people. And so one of the things that we've been doing with this Decolonising Futures series is kind of thinking about the economy from different angles. So we had an event about reparations, we had an event about reparations, and then we had an event about racial hierarchies. And today we're having an event thinking about disability justice and how disability justice and how it should be centered in the building of an alternative economic future. And also, we're doing these events as part of a crowdfunder because we're building a really exciting program of, a cooperative program for Black-led cooperatives. And these events are helping us to fundraise to be able to support amazing leaders in solidarity economics that we work with to continue doing their work. And so that's a bit about us. So today, we are joined by the badass duo Kym and Jumoke, and I like the story of how we actually ended up meeting. So years and years ago, I was just walking down the street in Angel, and then I just see these two badasses, and they were trying to take a picture. And you know what? I love to support Black women, so I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to help them take a picture because they were taking a selfie, and I was like, let me take a full body picture for them. And years later, it turned out it was Jumoke and Kym, and it's so exciting to be able to work together today. And I'll let them introduce themselves in a bit, but maybe I'll tell you a bit about why we decided to do the event today. So one of our biggest strategic frameworks is Just Transition Framework. So the Just Transition Framework kind of explains the economy that we live in today and how we could build an alternative economy and what that would look like. So under the Just Transition Framework, it describes the economy as we live in as an extractive economy, and the economy that we're working towards as the living economy. And so on the left here, you can see that under the extractive economy, we have a consumerist and colonial mindset. It's based on dig, dump, and burn, like dig, burn, and dump, and it's policed through militarism. And the whole purpose of the economy is to enclose wealth and power for a select few, right? But on the other side is the living economy. And what I love most about the living economy is that the worldview is based on caring and sacredness. And I know lots of us in the current economy are not cared for by the economy, and we're not treated as sacred by the economy. And when I was thinking of this event, and this is kind of reflective of lots of work that me and Guppi have been doing, of thinking about, what happens if we stopped moving away from an economy based on quantitative ideas of being, but qualitative. So, how people feel, how people exist, how people have joy, and how people have well-being, and how that's a big part of the economy. And, a lot of disability justice movements have been thinking about this and have been working on this for many, many years, right? And I was just when we're coming up with this event, we were really excited to hear from people who are actually doing the work. And I know that Kym and Jumoke have been doing amazing things in the time that the Triple Cripples has been started. And also, maybe to just kick us off, I'll read this really great quote that our friend Nim wrote, which is something that we come back to a lot of the time. And it states that there are real parallels in the ways that humans extract from the planet and create borders and police populations in service of profit, and the ways that humans extract what they need from the bodies of people and create borders between our bodies and control us in the service of profit. Many of the ways we understand and categorize people in the modern world were constructed explicitly by Northern Europe in order to justify the project of colonial dominance and wealth accumulation via industrial capitalism in the 19th century. They needed a workforce to deliver that expansion and extraction from the planet, and there were certain types of bodies that were deemed useful or not useful in the conquest. The colonizers assigned value to different human life to morally justify to themselves the degradation and dehumanization of different peoples in pursuit of personal wealth. A function of that dehumanization was to reduce people to bodies, and to reduce bodies to a vessel of labor, a tool of production. Black bodies were enslaved to provide free and forced labor to expand the extraction of resources for Europe, while disabled people were deemed unfit as they couldn't produce the labor needed in an industrial workforce. Queer people were deemed immoral because we weren't able to reproduce for the workforce that was needed for industrial expansion. And we come back to this quote a lot at Decolonizing Economics, because a lot of identity markers that we live under were actually constructed in service of profit, and they continue to be policed. And, I think under the current economy we live, we have lots of people who are deemed as disposable because they cannot work, or, there's so many labelings of who is disposable and who is valuable. And those are linked back to the surface of capital. So we decided to do this event to kind of, take this apart and speak to people who are kind of organizing around that. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Kym and Jumoke to introduce themselves as well. I don't know who'd like to start.
I'll just introduce us quickly. Hi, my name's Jumoke, and I'm one half of the Triple Cripples duo. We created the Triple Cripples like 3 years ago now, just as with the stories of most founders and co-founders. We saw something that wasn't being done and essentially took it upon ourselves to do it, essentially. So for us, we view the media as a very powerful tool, something that can not only aid in representation, so in terms of who is seen on wider platforms and seen by so many audiences, but also the very real impacts that it has on people's lives. So in terms of their social mobility, their education, their well-being, their health, and absolutely everything that makes up a human life. So we'd gotten together to actually highlight the narratives of those that are most marginalized, those that live at the intersections of ability, race, and gender. And that's who we are. I think Kym can give a little bit more.
Yeah, so that's who we are. And I guess the importance of which I guess everyone in here probably already has a clear idea of why it would be important to highlight the narratives of people who are erased, right? Because the impacts on your material experiences, your existence, your outcomes are huge, and oftentimes for disabled people, fatal. And so it's important that not only is there representation, not in the shallow sense, in terms of who's on your screen or who you see in media, but also representation behind all of that in decision making, in policy creation, in interaction, even within activism, right? Because it's even within activist circles, often disabled people who exist across multiple identities are erased, and disabled people are erased generally. So when you hear about, even if we think about movements that are directly related to marginalized groups, so like, okay, a movement that's dedicated to Black liberation, or we're not alongside, right? We're behind. When we finish liberating Black people, then we'll think about, disabled people. And it's like, no, but I'm disabled and Black at the same time, and so it's important that we have these conversations, and I hate to be a radio or a record, but when you look after the most marginalized people, when you cater for them, when you make sure that all your systems and your policies and all of that kind of look at what their needs are, everyone else automatically benefits. No one can fall through the gaps, right? So we started kind of to create a start. It's not the be all and end all, but it's to kind of say, okay, first step, okay, we're here, we exist. And then everything else will follow, right?
Thank you. And also, I really love that, because it's like, you know, when we look after the marginalized, everyone else benefits. And I feel like you should always play that record, Kym. It's a very great one. I love that record. It's my favorite one. And just to kind of, yeah, continuing a bit more of some of the things that you've spoken about, I'm interested about like how you came to be like doing the work that you were doing. Like, what's the origin story of like the Triple Cripples as well, and like how do these origin stories kind of relate to the histories of like capitalism and colonialism and the ways in which bodies are constructed? And a couple of weeks ago, me and Jumoke were just having a conversation about like, you know, the ways in which living under capitalism, you get internalized disableism, and also the whole world is like expecting you to like continue to like be productive and to work, and if you don't do those things then you are disabled, or like, you know, you're disposable, right? And so I kind of want to hear about the histories, yeah, like what is the histories that you are doing this work on top of as well.
Okay, so you asked to find out about the origin. Okay, the origin is a very millennial origin, really. We'd connected over social media, and you know, that's something really interesting actually, because obviously social media and the different platforms that are available now, you know, are quite like they're very capitalist, you know, like if we look at the different ways that they're set up, like they begin as free and then it's like, oh yeah, if you want a better experience, then you got to pay for this and you got to do that and you got to do this. And it kind of also speaks to the way that even when you are trying to rage against the machine and fight against capitalism and all of the terrible and destructive things that, you know, it comes through, that they are also systems within which we exist and reside and also use and make use of. So while yes, we are trying to dismantle systems, it's like these very same systems as well that actually can aid and foster in connecting and having community and being in communion with others, especially given everything that's going on with the ongoing, don't let the government lie to you, ongoing pandemic. It's the very case of like, how am I able to connect with people without being able to actually, you know, like use some of these systems that are not in and of themselves inherently bad, but it's just, you know, the way that they are being marketed, the way that they are being quite literally sold to us, or we are being sold to them. Yeah, so like 3 years ago, myself and Kym didn't actually know each other. It was just an idea that had existed independent of us meeting. And one reached out to the other and said, hey, what do you think about this? The other said yes, and bing, bang, boom, here you go.
I love that, the bing bang boom. And also I wondered if you could also talk a bit about like why you chose the name the Triple Cripples as well.
Oh, Kym can definitely tell you more about that.
To be honest, when we were looking for a name to call whatever it is that we were going to create, which we weren't completely clear about, we just knew we needed to start. First of all, we're erased, so no one really knows we exist, but then that also indicates that people don't care about us, right? So if we'd named it Black Disabled Women, nobody would have paid attention, right? Because those are three things nobody cares about, like in all together in one place. And it's just like, oh, nothing to do with me, don't care, couldn't care less. And so we were trying to think of names that would capture what we were about without having to engage with the content yet, but also would illustrate the three levels of marginalization that existed. So obviously there are multiple layers of marginalization, right? But the three main categories that we could talk about in terms of general society, what is generally in discourse if you talk about movements, we needed something that encapsulated rather that, but also, you know, Jumoke and I, we didn't really know each other when we were having this conversation. So I have a very weird sense of humor. And so I floated it as a joke, knowing that it was a bit but thinking, okay, well, I mean, if she doesn't laugh at this, then we can't be friends. I mean, we could do this thing together, but we could never be friends. And she fell out. Like, Jumoke was just like on the floor cracking up. And she was like, no, that's it. And I was like, oh, really? Because usually my harebrained ideas don't go over so well. But we both aligned on it because we both got immediately why it was relevant, why it would be important, and why it was a good name. And also in terms of that, that's how you think of me in society, though. That's how you treat me. And the other kind of interpretations, if you think about what it means to exist as a Black person in this society, what it means to exist as a woman who is Black in this society, you are crippled. Your opportunities, you're prevented, you're hampered, all of those things. And I think we talked about this in one of our first interviews, I think with AJ Plus, and it's the perfect way to describe all those three things, and also to accent the offense of our existence, right? People find our existence offensive. They may not, they say they don't, but the way in which we are treated, the way in which even talking about us is treated, the taboo, the hush hush, the don't say that, don't call yourself disabled. And just even, being in spaces that your body isn't supposed to fit into, so that's kind of how the name came about. And I think initially both of us were like, okay, we're going for it. We weren't sure how it would be received. We knew that there would be a lot of pushback, and there was some at the beginning from some folks who were like, we don't want to work with you because we don't like the name, and we don't want to be associated with that name. It's offensive. And then there were people who were like, haha, this is hilarious. I don't know if I'm allowed to laugh, but I'm intrigued, which was the goal, right? Jumoke is a media maven, and so she is well versed in the powers of advertising and understanding what works, right? But yeah, so that's how the name came about.
Thank you. I love that origin story as well. And yeah, I love that what you were saying as well about just like the ways in which society disables people across so many like intersections, and in particular like Black women, disabled people, and like there's so many of those what happens when the economy exists on your exploitation, right? And exists on your harm, and exists on your own pain as well. And like so many people are benefiting from that at the same time. Some people went to space yesterday because of that whole like continued exploitation of those existing on the margins as well. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of understand as well, just to ask you a question, like where do you see like the histories of capitalism and colonialism constructing the ways in which like disabled people are treated, or like the ways in which like there's like material being excluded from like having security, safety, agency, and autonomy? How do the histories of capitalism and colonialism factor into that?
So I'll talk more historically, and I guess Jumoke will then come and talk about how the ramifications in a modern context. So if we think historically, at least in terms of the not the birth or the kind of the catapult of capitalism into a main economic world system, right? It was largely built on, and I think you mentioned this in the beginning, Noni, on the backs of Black and brown people, right? If we think about the thing that really kind of helped capitalism to really ground itself and take root was the transatlantic enslavement of African people. So turning human beings into livestock property, then exploiting not just their labor, but their expertise. Because I think some of the things folks forget is that these were not unskilled people. When you go into a place and take a resource and expect them to build you wealth, you take what you think will maximize your opportunities, right? So we're taking the people who have the most skills in all of the areas that we'll need, whether that be carpentry, masonry, ironwork, medicine, like whatever you can think of, because Africa, when you went in, wasn't a desert wasteland of people who were just waiting for white people to turn up and tell them, oh, don't worry, you can be free of this Saharan abyss. It was a place where commerce took place. It was a place where education took place. It was a place where medical advancement took place. It's the place where the West went to go and learn how to perform successful abortions. Midwives were performing nearly 100% successful abortions. The West were performing 99% failures. And so we're talking about a place with a rich tapestry of not just expertise, but historically grounded and tested knowledge, right? So you go in there and you take all of those people and intellectual and physical resources, human resources, and you go and you exploit them for free. It's like me walking into IKEA and building my dream home with all of the furniture in there, just getting a truck and just emptying IKEA, and like, oh, do any of my friends want some? And just going and emptying all the IKEAs and being like, money, what's that? It's mine. We would never think of that as something that is okay to do or saying. We'd also say, you know, why are you hoarding all of the IKEA furniture? What if somebody else wants a wardrobe? And me going, why? I found the wardrobes first. I can have all the wardrobes. I don't have need for all of the wardrobes, but I want them, right? And so, not to compare my ancestors to IKEA furniture, but what I'm saying is that that's how they were treated, right? As property. And so already you've got a devaluing. I've forgotten the name of the thinker, but people often talk about this period of time as us being dehumanized. And I disagree. I don't think we're dehumanized. I think in order to dehumanize someone, you have to first consider them to be human, right? So animalized, you can say, because the way in which people viewed animals at the time was speciesist, so less than human. The value of their life is less than, and they don't feel feelings and all of those kinds of ideas. That's what was thought, and that those were the ideas imposed upon us despite the knowledge that that wasn't true. So you've taken the people, you've animalized them, you've also commodified them in ways you do not commodify necessarily your animals all the time. You have different hierarchies for your animals, right? Your dogs, you treat a certain way, your cats, you treat a certain way, but these particular animals that you had gone to steal, because people say, oh no, they were sold. I don't know, you'd have to be able to put a value on a human life, right? And so here we have the beginning of placing a value on a human life. That idea of buying someone to be your workforce, right? So there's that. So when you are treating human beings in that way, it means that their value to you is based on their productivity, because that's what I got you for, to develop and make things for me and make me super popular in my capitalist crew. And so with that, it means that my care for you is based on, and my care for your health is based on the aspects of your health that might impinge on me being able to make profit, right? My care for your mental and emotional well-being doesn't really exist. Like, that's not part of it. Like, you are a tool, right, for me. So if someone's a tool, you only fix the parts that are broken, like you maintain it in order for it to continue to work for you. But what it also means is that if it breaks, if it starts to rust, you quickly consider replacing it. The development of the tool is important for you, advancement of the tool. And so therefore, if your tool is biological, you can breed the best tool, right? So you then start breeding. And what happens when you are indiscriminate because you do not think that this is a human is that sometimes you are creating, and it's not just, we have to remember, it's not just, we talk about capitalism like it's this system that doesn't involve human emotion and active thought, right? The people who were perpetuating these systems were inherently cruel, and evil isn't a good enough word, because I think that it almost monstrifies people, makes it seem like these weren't average human people that we encounter every day. Well, I don't know if human is the word for them, but what I'm saying is that if you think about the fact that we're not just looking at, I'm breeding a tool, I'm also indiscriminate about how I do it. So I'm not thinking about, what I'm thinking about is the best thing that I can get, right? So when I am then kind of forced, when I'm raping these women or getting these women to be raped by anyone who is supposed to be the best bull, because that's how we're breeding people now, mother, son, all of this stuff doesn't matter. The term motherfucker comes from that period of time where slave masters, because sometimes they would blindfold the men and make them have sex with, make them rape all of these women, some of whom were breeding sows, right? So all they do is pop out babies. Some of whom might have birthed them, right? So someone said trigger warning. When you're talking about capitalism, everything is a trigger. When you're talking about disability, everything is a trigger. When I'm talking about Blackness, everything's going to be a trigger. This is historically contextual, right? And it is the daily existence of everyone who exists in my skin. Slavery is but 2 generations away from me. So these things that I talk about, and my existence in my skin as a disabled woman, like these are the things that I wake up with every morning. So if you're going to come to these kinds of things, at least when I'm speaking, you kind of have to know that we're going to talk about actual things. It's not going to be watered down. So if that's not comfortable for you, please, by all means, exit. I'll be done in like 2 minutes. But yeah, so these types of things is what was being done. So people will be born with disabilities, right? Genetic mutations are a real thing, which is why you're not supposed to have sex with your mother and father. Like these things happen. But when that happens, what someone who is not able to produce because of genetic mutations, because of, mutation is even a terrible word for it, but because of disabilities that happen because of these kinds of biological things, what happens to those people? Can they be utilized by the master? Are they useful for capitalism if capitalism's goal is for production? The other thing is the conditions under which people were being held, the conditions under which they were working. The average lifespan, I think, of an enslaved adult was like 7 years or something ridiculous like that. That is not a time. And if you think a lot of people were working from when they were children, by the time you even get to a teenager, you probably got lots and lots of injuries and things that turned into disabilities. And so if your production is lower, what happens to the people around you? How does it affect, if we're not able to produce this amount of stuff today, and this is the quota we've been given, who gets punished? All of us, right? And if I am supposed to be a breeding sow and breeding the best stock, and I give birth to children that are defective, who gets punished? Who gets killed? What happens, right? So slowly what you find is disability turns into something that is detrimental, not just for the individual, but for the group. And so it's inevitable that when you're in a situation where people's lives are at stake and a horrible situation could be made worse, that you then will become the scapegoat for that anguish, for that pain, for that trauma, right? And so you see developing not just what we see now in terms of the cultures of silence and taboo around disability within our communities, but also this idea of working through and keeping going no matter what in order to do what the master needs done, so that you can prove yourself to be of use despite, right, your positioning. You also see the development of the collective, not animosity, but disdain for disability, within communities, but also in general, that development of the idea that disability is a direct, it directly impinges the ability for someone to extract with impunity, right? I can't extract from you just anyhow, because the conditions that I've set you can't meet, and therefore you're useless to me, right? And so those are some of the foundations. We haven't gone into all of it, and there are loads of psychological elements and all that kind of stuff. But just in general, if you look at just even on a surface level, those conditions and how capitalism creates them, you can then trace that through time, and through other civilizations that were affected by capitalism and colonialism, and see how that plays out and how it still exists in our societies today. But Jumoke, I'm sure, can talk about like the modern side of it and what that means today.
And Jumoke will do that now. All that Kym has talked about and described thus far leads us to a situation where people's worth, especially people like us, being of African descent, more so than anybody else, is that your value, your worth comes from what you are able to do. So if you can't do anything, you have no value. Like, what is the point of you? You're automatically seen as a burden. I was recently speaking on the BBC Politics London show, and one person that they had interviewed was this woman with albinism that was talking about how the difficulty of trying to get a job and also trying to have reasonable adjustments made for them to enable them to actually do the jobs that they'd gotten was actually quite demoralizing, and it was something that was made more difficult than it needed to be. And it obviously it affects one's confidence, it affects the way that you view yourself, because you then start to live in your own head and internalize all of these things. And of course, internalize ableism and disableism would of course happen, because how could it not? You're having so many messages brought to you from the media, which is very far away from you, but also in more interpersonal and like closer relationships. So it's one thing to see these ideas being spouted on the news, on TV shows, through all sorts of media, but when it's also those that are nearest and sometimes dearest to you, it comes to a place where actually, what is the point of me? Why am I actually here? I cannot produce, I cannot make anything, I cannot do anything. So therefore I am lacking in value. And it's something actually that Noni and myself had discussed just over a week ago. It's this case of like, actually, and it's very important, actually quite revolutionary, to, as difficult as it is, like, I'm not saying that it's easy, it is something that it's incredibly difficult, because it's hundreds and hundreds of years of like campaigning and marketing saying that if you do things, then you have value, but if you don't do things, then you don't have value. It's to just try and break away from that and move away from that, because you have value because you're here. Like, you are here, you exist, so therefore you have value. You do not have value because you were able to add some points on the stock market. You do not necessarily have value because you were able to create something. So whether it is building a house, making a song, creating in whatever sense of the word it is, because that actually gets to be very tiring, and you'll actually wear yourself out, and unfortunately kind of like aid capitalism in the job of killing you, right? Because if you are, if your job is affecting you physically, and you're toiling away physically, and then within your own mental states, you are also doing all this heavy lifting, constantly questioning whether you have value, whether you deserve to be here, what is actually the point of you, what is the use of you, that's another way of kind of like destroying yourself and aiding capitalism by it also telling you that you have no value, that you have no worth. You have value, absolutely, because you are here. And it's something that thankfully was a message that was often kind of like said in my household, like throughout my entire life, like for my parents, and I'm sure other people's parents that are the children of immigrants, migrants, what the hell even is that, oh, you've got to work hard, you've got to work hard, you've got to produce, like, you got to make sure that you are of benefit, that you are of service. But my parents never actually did that. It's like, oh, Jumoke, we don't actually want you to work hard. Like, we've been working hard our entire lives. We still, you know, work hard, you know, getting closer and closer to pension age. And it's like, we've been working hard all our entire lives. And it's like, where did that actually get you? It just led to you working hard some more. It led to you, you know, enduring years and decades of more work. You know, we're getting to a place where people are born to work and work until they die. That is no life at all. And that is something, again, I'm very grateful that my parents are like, you know what, you did your best. And if it didn't work out, like, that's what it is. But to now get down on yourself because you weren't able to do X, Y, or Z, or you weren't able to achieve X, Y, or Z, like, you are deserving. Everybody's, let me not say everybody because I don't fuck with everybody like that. But like, me and mine are deserving, you know, like, of a soft life. It's just kind of like, there's so much harshness in the world. There's absolutely so much harshness in the world. And it's a case of like, oh, you know, you gotta give, you gotta work twice as hard or 10 times as hard to be like half as good. How about I work 0 times as hard and I'm 0 good? Well, you're gonna kill me. Well, I mean, they are trying to kill you. Like, when in doubt, presume that the government is trying to kill you. But still, like, nobody's gonna come fight you really and truly. Like, what will actually happen if you half-assed it? Like, what, like, really and truly, like, what would actually happen if you didn't work yourself to burn out to be able to achieve something? Like, you and whoever else, let's say Timothy at the office, like, he is absolutely not doing the job at all. He shouldn't have been in the job in the first place. Like, he just managed to use his various privileges and whoever he knows to be able to get into the job. So now you're working twice as hard to be able to pick up Timothy's slack. No, 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 no. Like, when it's time for your lunch, take your lunch. Like, when it's time for you to clock out, clock the fuck out. What are you doing? Like, all these like extra hours that you're putting in, did the manager notice? No, he put you on a double shift, no overtime. Like, no, no, you deserve so much better than that. And you should demand so much better than that. And it's a case of like, there's so much power that we have if we're able to come together collectively, because what they count on, you know, they being the powers that be, that, you know, write the checks, etc., is that, oh, well, if you won't do it, I know somebody else that'll do it for like less money. Like, what's been going on quite significantly in the US right now, especially within the service industry, is that people have just been quitting. They have been quitting en masse, saying, no, I'm not putting up with it no more. There was this franchise, I can't remember which state it was, a McDonald's franchise, and they were talking about how, oh yeah, we can help you with like college stuff. We're able to give you these benefits, like actual real proper benefits. But they weren't doing that until they were forced. They were always able to do that, but they were just trying to eat you whole for profit. And you were there, bones dangling about, making sure that you were able to what? Have the McFlurry machine still not working. Please, baby, rest. Close your eyes. Just close your eyes, relax. Jumoke said so. I mean, if you get fired off of this, I'm so sorry, baby. But like, there's got to be more to life than work. There absolutely has to be more to life than work, because billionaires are going off into space trying to colonize somewhere else, right? And it's just kind of like, but we're here toiling away, working away for what? You you have value because you're here. You don't need to be, and you absolutely shouldn't be working until you're absolutely tired, because the thing is, like, people say, of it was a tweet that I saw, it doesn't necessarily come from me, but it's just kind of like people talk down on sex workers, you know, kind of like using their body and like getting paid off their body, but it's just kind of like, you have been working back-breaking work for like 20, 30, 40 odd years. You've also been using your body to like get money, and they're paying you pennies, and now all of a sudden, like, your back is mashed up, like your knee hurts every single time it gets a little bit, like there's a little bit of chill in the air. And it's just kind of like, we have to demand better, we have to push for better, and we can only do that together. There was never any sort of fight won by somebody trying to do it by themselves, you know, like even David, like if we go biblical, you know, like against Goliath, you know, like had a little bit of help from the big God. So it's just kind of like, who are you trying to impress by doing all of this extra stuff? Like, suffering is not going to win you any awards. Nobody's going to be like, wow, man, I saw you pull that triple double. Well done. I appreciate you. No, now they want you to work at quadruple because they knew that you could do that before. Have people's expectations of you in the dirt, baby. Have people's expectations of you in the dirt in terms of like professional. Don't be out here making like your personal relationships like all wacky and whatnot. But it's just kind of like, if they know that you've done something before, then there's a likelihood that you'll do it again. Just be like, no, I'm not here to be a commodity. I'm not here to be used. I'm here to be a baby girl, baby boy, baby person, and just to like enjoy life. Like, my mother didn't carry me for like 9 months, go through like 2 extra days of like labor for me to be toiling away. No, you deserve a soft life, and go get it.
I think it's fair to say that with all of that being said, I think it's important to note that some folks just genetically will find it hard to resist capitalism, right? If you're used to, and you've got generations of people before you who've just been working to death, though the fatigue exists in your genes epigenetically, that idea, that thing of, you know, I need to keep going, I need to prove my worth, I need to work hard, I need to do this, that is something that exists for a lot of people. And you become often what you have seen around you. And, you know, for a lot of people, especially for folks from marginalized backgrounds, who are the children of migrants, whatever that means. Some people were invited here, so I don't know why they still sort of say that. Most people were invited here or were forced to come here because of the conditions that capitalism created, right? You are used to, and sometimes are positioned where you have to see value in yourself through workhorse positioning. And that is what you'll see. It's almost like a badge of honor, like, and it's an element of pride. Well, you know, all my family worked hard. We worked ourselves to the bone. My mum worked 17 jobs just to put food on the table. And it's like, in what Jumoke is saying is like, yeah, but why 17 jobs just to put food on the table? Does that mean she was actually able to put food on the table, or does that mean someone was exploiting her, right? And though not everyone is in a position to say, you know what, let me just do the bare minimum, most of us, especially if you are reliant on these organizations and corporations for survival, how do you then say, well, I'm not going to work as hard, especially when this is where the intersections of race come in, right? And ability, because as a Black person, I might want to, at my job, do the bare minimum, but I'm aware of the societal standards for what I'm supposed to not be able to do, and someone waiting for me to make a mistake. So often I'm going to be doing above and beyond just to prove that I'm worthy of the position, to prove that if they've been doing a diversity push, to prove that I'm not here as a diversity hire. Actually, I'm probably more qualified than you, so let me prove it. There are so many things that come into play when we're talking about these things. And so I think it's very difficult for a lot of people to disengage from capitalism in the ways that are necessary en masse for us to do in order to move forward. And if we think about ableism as an extension of capitalism, for a lot of disabled people, like most disabled people who would want to be in employment cannot be because of ableist policies and ableist hiring, right? And then the sexism that exists within hiring anyway will intersect with that. And then the racism. So what are the options in a capitalist society for folks who exist along those planes? What does survival, I mean, we should be thriving, but surviving even then becomes an issue. And especially if you are reliant on the system to provide you with sustenance and the ability to have housing or whatever, how do you disengage when your hand is out, right? And so I guess in some ways, thinking about capitalism and disability and all of that is thinking of a way for it not to be that situation. It's relying on your abuser for housing and for kind of sustenance is the most unhealthy relationship that one could have. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in that position. We're reliant on our oppressors, on our abusers to enable us to live. And even if we wanted to, live our best life, like we have to ask permission from those who are hampering it, right? So it's things to think about. I don't got all the answers though.
That is so much stuff to think about as well. And I just really appreciated what you were saying about, especially thinking about like how under capitalism, we are tools, right? You're a tool for labor, and tools don't have feelings, apparently. Tools don't feel stuff. Tools are just, you just use a hammer and you're just like hammering it. And it's so interesting because I've never thought about it in that way before. And I'm just really thankful for that framing as well. And also like conversations around like how under this system we are like abused and harmed and hurt. And also at the same time is like I remember I was thinking about my grandma. My grandma is one of the most hardest working people ever, but then at the same time her hard work does not actually translate to the material benefits in her life, right? And I think as Black people especially, no matter how hard you work, you are still going to not actually have any form of like material security and safety. And like that myth of capitalism was just like, you must like wait. And also my grandmother was a really big fan of like, you need to work hard if you're not working hard. But I'm like, babe, like, it's just, you're tired and you're exhausted. Like, what's going on? And it's so interesting how like we also end up being, what's it called? I don't know what that word is. We end up internalizing that and then also policing other people. And I'm so glad that you've really brought that on. And also in terms of ancestral pain as well, right? Like there's so much ancestral, generational like harm and hurt that so many of us are like still unpicking. And you know what you were saying, that it's like it's not as easy to just be like, oh well, I'm just gonna rest now, I'm gonna do this. But like that's a form of ancestral trauma, right? As well. So yeah, lots of things to think about, and I really appreciated that. And I feel like this is a really great segue of how do you then survive if literally the system wants you to die? Like, how do people do that? And how have people been doing that as well? Like, I think some of the work that we do at Decolonizing Economics is kind of like thinking about like what we call like self-help strategies, or ways in which people have been surviving outside of the system, which is literally trying to kill you at the same time. And also like how then do you look after that? How do you maintain that? And I think especially with COVID, we saw lots of conversations around mutual aid, but lots of those mutual aid things have been existing for centuries for people who were like made to not be able to survive under the capitalist system. So I'm interested in like, have you seen any of these how in your work do you see like community care being a function of like supporting those who are actually being harmed by the system? Random question, just community care, how do you see that? And also how can we then challenge, because you also said, I think both of you were saying how all of these things cannot happen individually. How do you see that us making that collective shift as a collective as well? Have you seen that somewhere? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you feeling pessimistic? That's a question.
I think certainly the way that I have gone about it is just like conversations are incredibly powerful. Like words have power. Like sometimes I'll think about certain times where my thinking will change, like my eyes open a little bit wider, and it's because I heard something, you know, like I was privy, you know, to a certain conversation, or I'd watched something or like heard something. And I think conversations have to absolutely be an important bedrock of how we're able to connect with one another, but then also kind of like build movements as well. Because even through conversation, you might give an example that has happened to you or is happening to you. And if somebody else is able to relate to that, you know, like that's a potential comrade, right? That's somebody else that's going through, you know, this, whatever it might be. And then you're able to pull other people into conversation and see like, actually, no, it's not just an issue affecting me, this disabled Black woman in London, but it's actually also affecting this other like non-disabled Black woman in Leeds. It's affecting this queer person that happens to live in Cornwall. It's you know, then you move further out and further out, it's actually happening off the island, and it's happening in different different places around the world. So I think conversation is absolutely important. It's not only how we learn about others, but also how we learn about ourselves, and also an important way of viewing ourselves as well. Because if you think something is just a problem that is happening to you, then you might start to think, well, am I the problem? Am I the issue? Nobody else seems to have this problem. Is it just me? But being in community with others, having those conversations, I think is a really great starting point, because then you're also able to support one another as well. Because through this work that we as the Triple Cripples are trying to do, and y'all are trying to do with decolonizing economics, like you cannot do it alone. And you know, these partnerships, these bonds were only able to be created because you spoke, right? Because you started talking. It's like, actually, I think this way. It's like, I think this way too. It's like, this has been disturbing my spirit. It's like, this has been disturbing my spirit too. So yeah, I think conversations are absolutely the very best place to start. And then you also see people that can not only be your support, but also somebody else that you can support, and also your strength as well, and somebody with whom you can go through the highs, go through the lows, and also kind of like strategize and work together. Yeah, and it's just funner, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really good starting point. I think that it also allows an opening for the sharing of information. Information is a key form of power, right? It's, if you don't know stuff, it's hard then to navigate the world that you're existing in. And sometimes, a lot of the times, there is, even we're talking about mutual aid, there are so many different initiatives and things that people could have access to, but because of lack of information, because of lack of sharing, because of gatekeeping of information, they will never know about it. So as Jumoke said, that the importance of conversations is huge. And also kind of diversifying the way in which we communicate, because some of our communication methods are very exclusionary. The people who need to get the information cannot access it, right? The formats in which they appear are not accessible. The places that we, you know, put the information will never reach the people that they're supposed to be benefiting. So I think it's important to have different communication methods. But yeah, mutual aid is amazing. I've seen in the last few years, like people being able to support one another through saying, you know what, the government isn't going to do it. And my local council isn't going to do it, and all of these things. But yet we're going to organize as a community, and we're going to pay people's rent. We're going to get people mobility aids. We are going to move someone out of their house who's in a bad domestic violence situation. Like, there have been so many things I've seen where people have actually come together and said yes. I don't want to throw a spanner in the works, but I think it's important to bear in mind that people who are at the bottom of the ladder in terms of the capitalist hierarchy, sharing their resources isn't going to materially change anyone's circumstances in the long run. The people who have the resources, most of the resources, who are hoarding them, who have most of it, are the ones who are supposed to be doing this, right? Us helping each other, yes, is an interim, is a desperation measure. It is helping keep us alive in survival mode, but it's not the answer to curing the disease of capitalism. What needs to happen is redistribution of wealth and assets and resources. And so that is an important part of it. So mutual aid is great, but it's not the best option, because if I have £2 and I'm giving you £1, I have £1 too, we both have £1, and £1 can't get you anything. £1 can't pay for schooling, £1 can't pay my electricity bill. Do you know what I mean? And so it's like, if I have all of this resource, what am I redistributing? And this is why this idea of allyship is a problematic area for me, because if we're saying that we are decolonizing and anti-racist and, you know, anti-capitalist and all of these things, then it should be near impossible for me to maintain a position of hoarding. And so what am I doing with my paycheck at the end of the month? Where am I redistributing it? What am I doing when I get an opportunity to take a job and there is someone who is better placed, who is a person of color who could be in that position? What am I doing in my local community to actually improve the material conditions of people there? Am I just on social media posting squares and quotes from Martin Luther King and reposting Black trauma and being like, oh my God, how could this happen in 2021? Is that what I'm doing? And what am I, when I go into work and I notice something isn't accessible, we don't have fire alarms that have lights on them so people who might not be able to hear the alarm can know that there's something going on. Am I going to complain? Am I going to make noise about it? If I see my colleagues making certain comments at work about other colleagues who are from particular backgrounds, am I standing up for them? Am I reporting them to HR? If I see some email discourse that is passive aggressive towards a particular person and always is, am I making a point to stand in the gap and go and report it to HR, like I report all other things? Like, what am I actually doing to redistribute power? What am I really doing to redistribute wealth? If my grandmother wills me a mansion, am I going, okay, yeah, of course, I'm going to keep it? Or am I saying, okay, how could I use this opportunity to redress, at least on a personal level, the balance of wealth and the privilege that I have accrued? That's no fault of my own. Like, someone willing me something is not something that I have personally worked for or acquired myself. So surely there'd be no problem with redistributing that, right? Because that would be a sign of a historical hoarding, right? That needs to be redistributed. So I think it's mutual aid, fantastic, but it needs to not just be on the level of people who care about each other. It has to be about the people who would be giving up power, giving up wealth, giving up real resources. That to me would be mutual aid, and saying, okay, you know, cut out the government, fuck those guys. But the rest of us who benefit from the government's policies, who benefit from the economic situation at the time right now, which could involve people who are in government. You know, some of them might give a fuck, but just toe the line anyway. You know, if those people are part of this mutual aid system, then I think it is something that is effective and useful. Though I do think it is a powerful tool and a powerful start for people to realize that they aren't alone, and that we do need to care about each other, and that the dreams of the rich are not our dreams. Their aspirations are not things that we will ever, most of the time, achieve in our lifetimes, that they sell us a false image about what is possible through our hard work. As you said, Noni, your grandmother working super, super hard. I don't know if your grandmother is a billionaire, but I'm quite sure she's not in space right now. Like, and I think just having that understanding that we are a group and we need to look after each other, and actually we are in a particular position, and it's not for us to kind of be against each other, but this system is working against all of us, right? Yes, some more than others, but recognizing that even allows us to have the empathy that makes us want to make everything better for everyone. But yeah, as I said before, I don't got all the answers. I don't know what a good version of mutual aid would look like. I don't, other than what I've said, I don't know what could possibly be done other than those things, other than people making it their personal business to become better as individuals and as a collective. But what does that even mean, you know?
I love all your answers, Kym, also, because like you just throw the spanner in the works. Keep on throwing the spanner in the works, because I feel like most of the time, like, you know, there's just no answers to anything, right? There's just ways in which we're like reframing and like rethinking about it as well. And I really appreciate you bringing that into the space. And also, I'm just going to read something that Suleiman posted off the back of your comment. Suleiman posted that we don't, which is a quote by Mickey Kendall. And it's like, we don't need allies, we need accomplices. Fighting oppression isn't a spectator sport. Allies cheer you on, accomplices wade into the fight too. So I think that's really, I really like that quote, because it's getting to that time of the year where it's like, what did you do with those black squares? What did you do with them? Are they still there? So thank you so much for that. So we're running over and basically this is it. But I just wanted to check just one more thing. Is there anything that or ways that people can continue to support your work after this session? Is there anything that's coming up that you'd like to let people know about as well?
Kym, if you could quickly run through that. It's just because I got a dip. So yeah.
Okay, Jumoke. So you can find most of our stuff on our Instagram. It's Triple Cripples on Instagram, 1P at the beginning, 2 P's in the next word. And then I just did a guest post for Almaz Ahini's She Dares to Say email newsletter. The link for that is on, I think they posted it in the chat here, but it's also in our link tree on our Instagram. I think there's also a link to Jumoke's BBC interview the other day. I think it's just interact with the content, but also contact us. If you'd like to do things. But there is so much stuff online. If you type the Triple Cripples in Google, like you'll find a lot of things that you can engage with. I think there's an interview with The Voice that has been posted up as well that kind of goes into a little bit of depth about some of the topics we've talked about today. And so I think it's, yeah, just engage and try and read books. There's a book called Capitalism and Disability, which is kind of a good book to read if you haven't read it. I also think Fearing the Black Body is a really good book to read, as is Afro-Pessimism, as is Ain't I a Woman? So check out those titles. And also Ghislaine Kinwanu has just recently released her book, Living While Black. I think everyone should read that book as well. Sometimes you have to collate different tools in order to create the world that you want to see, right? And I think all of these books will allow you to engage with what needs to be done. It's not about Kym and Jumoke, it's about all of us, right? So educate yourself. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I've just learned so much, and I'm so glad that you've been in this space with us as well. Just to wrap up, thank you everyone that came today. Thank you for all your comments and all your thoughts and all your great energy as well. I feel like we all have some things to go and reflect on. to just chew on. And thank you so much, Kym, also for those recommendations. Love a book. And also at the same time, just to remind you why we're having these events. So we're currently crowdfunding for the future of BPOC, Black and POC-led cooperatives. We're doing a cooperative learning program. Me and Guppi have been working on it for a couple of years, and we're hoping to launch it. So please donate, share with anyone that you think you can, share with those allies. Yeah, share with those Black square people that you have on your Instagram, chase them up and ask them to donate as well. And also we've got one more event coming up, which is the Economics of Queerness, which is happening next week, which I'm really excited about. So you can still sign up for that as well. And today's event was recorded, so we'll be able to share with you after. And we know that a couple of people joined a bit later as well, because there was a bit of a glitch with the different times. So we'll be able to share that with you. And I feel like I had one more thing. I just would love to say thank you to Sophie, to Guppi and Ola as well, who've done lots of background work today. And it's been really great. So I think that's everything. Guppi, did you have anything to add? No?
Nah, you're good.
Okay, cool. Thanks everyone. And we'll see you soon and have a great day.